Welcome back again. I think this is probably going to be our last in this mini-series on solution-focused counseling methods and techniques. If you haven't seen the first two videos, I strongly encourage you to watch those because this is cumulative. Solution-focused really follows a lot of a sequence of how to help somebody understand their problem and how to fit very specific solutions to that problem. Again, it's kind of like getting them to describe exactly what type of screw they're experiencing. Flat tip, cross tip, Allen wrench type, star tip, what size, so that you can help them to identify for themselves what type of screwdriver, being an analogy, needs to fit that problem. And it's going to be their solutions, their screwdriver. So let's pick up where we left off. I often use a scaling question before I leave with them, and I ask them to scale where they were when we first started this conversation. Scale of 1 to 10, where were you in terms of believing you can get to your goal or your progress towards your goal? 0, it's never happening. 10, hey, Dad respects me all the time. Dad lets me spend my money with some responsibility and freedom. Dad pulls me off to the side and has conversations. 0 to 10 or 1 to 10. They might say, I was about a 2. Well, where are you now in terms of moving toward that goal? Well, I think now I'm probably at a 4. Wow. And remember, focus on their behavior. What did you do to help move you from a 2 to a 4? Because that's a good little jump. Well, I thought about some things I've done in the past that have worked with Dad. Things that help him feel respected so he can respect me. Ways that I approached him when he wasn't busy, or I kept my goals realistic that made it easier for him to say yes. And remembering how that works in the past, or worked in the past, can help me think about ways to do that in the future. Good for you. I think you're well on your way. So let's review here. You want to be, I hear you saying, correct me if I'm wrong, because again this is about their solutions. You want to make sure you're respectful. You want to make sure you have good timing in the way you talk to Dad about things. You want to make sure that you are realistic in your goals and that you treat him with respect, and you're more likely to get respect. Yeah. Now, and you can be realistic with them too. Does that mean that you or I are going to get everything that we want with Dad, or anybody for that matter? No. Okay, so let's just keep it realistic. And maybe next time, to shoot for a 5 instead of a 10, let's take it one day at a time. Give them a big hug if they're your child. Probably not if they're your subordinate at work. Maybe not if they're your neighbor. But those are some solution-focused techniques. Another technique is to validate their solutions in the moment when they're talking with you. For example, use that same scenario. If one of the solutions they came up with is talking with respect to their dad, you can say that, when you came in here initially and you were talking to me, your voice was all raised and you were red in the face, and I didn't think it was about me, but I kind of felt like, man, you're pretty upset. But since then, you have really calmed down. You're talking to me very respectfully, and I feel good about our conversation, good about our relationship. And I want you to know that I respect you for being able to talk those ways. It helps me to hear you better. So you're validating what they're doing in the conversation with you in the moment. Or let's say they come up with some other ideas. You can say, wow, that's very discerning of you, or that's very insightful or perceptive. I think that having a sharp mind like that can be a great advantage to you in having wise conversations with your father. To validate what they're actually doing in the conversation with you, to let them know that's a resource for them in the problem that they have described to you. Another technique is to create space for processing, or room. Now what I mean by that is when you're talking with them and they're talking with you, we're usually up in the top of our brains, the front of our brains, very logical, very reasoning, and that's important. We need to do that. But after the conversation is over, things will sink down a little bit more into their brain, and some of the deeper thoughts, some of the subconscious things will come up and mesh with that, and they'll begin to integrate and try to tie some things together that they hadn't thought about because they were engaging in a conversation and focus on you. And if you give them some space, you've left the room or the house or the office or wherever, they're by themselves, come back or give them a call or a text in 15 minutes, half an hour, don't wait too long, and say, I was just thinking about you and wondered what else you might be thinking about our conversation, and maybe some things that we didn't discuss. Specifically mention that, some things that might have come to your mind since then. And they might more specifically, even than before, more specifically identify the problem or have another idea about a potential solution. For example, they might say, well, the more I thought about it, it's not so much that he wouldn't let me buy that CD in the store. I got really upset because I'm thinking, if he's not going to let me spend my money, which is only 20 bucks, 25 bucks, now in this situation, what about when I have to go to him in 6 months with that big request for expenditure that we were talking about, whatever that is, buying a car, getting their first place, if they're 18, about to move out of the house, and they want help with the down payment on the apartment, whatever it is. So it's not about that, it's about this future thing, and then you can go back and have another conversation, because now it's a new problem that may need new solutions. But again, you're helping them to think about their behaviors that can help them with their solutions for their problems. Not worried about why it's happening, not worried about where it's coming from. Unless it's coming from them, they're articulating it to move toward their solutions. One last method, the only last one I'm going to give you here with solution-focused counseling, is to give them a homework assignment. It can be very simple, but it always needs to be about positive behavior they've had that meets their described problem for their described solution. And it can be something as simple as over the next few days, when something happens between you and Dad that works out in a positive way, I want you to write it down. What was it that happened, and what did you do to help that happen in a positive way about anything? And then to take a note at those, take a look at those notes and see what are some themes here, and bring them back and let's discuss those. Okay, that helps them to be less problem focused and more solution focused. Hope all of that makes some sense to you and is helpful to you. Again, solution-focused counseling, which can be done by parents, supervisors, neighbors, anybody, helps a person focus on very specific behaviors that they do, not that the other people do, because we'd love to say they're the problem, they need to change, and that may be the case, but there's nothing we can do to change the other person. We can only work with the person who's in the room with us to identify what they have done in the past that has worked, and how they might repeat those types of effective behaviors toward new solutions for their problem. Again, hope that's helpful. Hope that gives you some good ideas, and I will see you next time.